Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hypnot Hooray Online, and this is podcast episode number 10. So yes, we've reached podcast episode number 10. We're now in double digits. It'll probably be a while before we hit triple digits, but yeah, I'm really excited I've reached this important, at least to me, milestone. But another reason for me to be happy is I reached 5,000 subscribers on this channel. So thank you so much if you subscribed and are part of this community. I'm really happy you're here. I know in my most recent video, podcast episode number 9, there's quite a few new people from that video, and so I'm wondering if my blouse number 1 light in the thumbnail maybe caught people's attention, but nonetheless, if you're here from that video, thank you so much for joining this community and wanting to stick around. But also, if you've been here from the beginning, thank you so much for all your support. I really appreciate it, and yeah, I'm just really happy. So for today's podcast episode, I don't have any finished objects. I have my whip still chugging along, but I did reach a point in a few of my projects where I thought it would be nice to share a bit of an update. I've made some progress on quite a few of them, and today it's actually local yarn store day at the time of filming, so I did go and check out 2 yarn shops, and so I have an acquisition from that to share. So let's just dive into the whips. So the first one I wanted to share is the My Honey Vest by Wool and Beyond. Gotta grab the third ball. Okay, so this is the My Honey Vest by Wool and Beyond. It is a 2-color honeycomb brioche vest, and the yarn that I'm using is for the back panel, but I haven't really used it since, is Mominoki Finnwool in the shade Milk Tea. For the main color of the honeycomb brioche, I'm using Plutolopi, Istex Plutolopi, I believe, in the shade Ivory Beige. And then for the background, I'm using Artfil MericanaDK in the shade Copper. And it is still a little bit ramen noodly because this is frogs from a previous project and I never soaked the yarn. But I figured with it being the background, it's okay, and I think the tension's been okay. But yeah, those are the 3 yarns that I've been using for this project. So at my last podcast episode, during my last podcast episode, I did say that the 2-color honeycomb brioche is working out a lot better than when I did a single color honeycomb brioche, and I didn't jinx myself, or at least I'm going to knock on wood again that I still haven't jinxed myself, because I did the increases for the armhole. So the way that the vest is shaped, there's the horizontal back panel, and then you work just the 2-color honeycomb brioche flat for the armholes, and then you start working increases on either end. This is the back panel to shape the armholes, and then to add some width around the bust. So there's a few rounds of increases, and the increases are done in order to maintain the honeycomb brioche stitch pattern. When you're doing the increase round, you're increasing by 3 stitches at the edge. And so far, I think it's been going okay. Like I said, I didn't really make any mistakes on it and had to frog back, but it is a little bit confusing to maintain the honeycomb brioche with the 3 new stitches. So for this section, I'm really glad that there were videos from Wool and Beyond's website. So if you check out her website, she has tutorials for how to do the increase rounds. It just says increase round 1 and increase round 3, but then at the end of those videos, she shows how to start the rounds 2 and 4 of the 4-row repeat, because that's when I found it was a little bit tricky to integrate those 3 casted on stitches, because you cast on those 3 stitches with the background color. So how to integrate it into the 2 colors of the brioche. It may not make sense right now, but if you're working the pattern and you were a little bit confused, such as me, those videos are really helpful. There were two issues though in the pattern that I noticed at the time of my last podcast episode, and I forgot to share. So I want to apologize for that, and I hope it's not going to be too confusing that I bring them up now. But I thought if you were thinking of starting this vest, there's two things that I wish I would have known at the time. So the first is once you finish working the horizontal knit panel with the first color, in my case the Finnwool, you have to pick up stitches. Maybe the back here will show you a little bit better. You have to pick up stitches along one edge for the brioche, and it's worked with the background color. So the copper, you pick up stitches and then you work a setup round before doing the 4-row repeat for the honeycomb brioche. And it's not explicitly stated in the pattern, but I think what you should be doing is to pick up those stitches with that background color. You should use the tail end of your yarn to pick up, so then you can do that setup row, which is supposed to be on the wrong side. And when you pick up with the tail end of your yarn, when you slide your stitches to work the working yarn, it's already at the wrong side. Whereas if you didn't do that, you'd have to cut the yarn and then join again. So just, I think it would eliminate an unnecessary end to weave in. It's not stated in the pattern, but I was a little bit unsure what to do. And then it took a little bit of calculations to figure out the pickup round here. So I did it a few times only to realize that I had to break the yarn or cut the yarn. So I redid the whole thing again with the tail end. So yeah, I just would say you should do that. And the second thing is for the 4-row repeat for the honeycomb brioche, the instructions, I'm 99% sure that the 4th row should say wrong side main color instead of saying right side main color. So that was just like a small technical error, but I don't know why it said that, and I was a little bit confused, but I figured that that's probably what it meant, and the brioche is working okay. So yeah, that 4th row, you should be working it with the main color. It might be like a translation thing though, so I'm thinking maybe I should just email the pattern designer and just clarify, and I don't know, maybe there could be an update, but I noticed that that might be a mistake in the pattern. But other than that, those two technical things, this has been really fun to knit up. So like I said, I've been working the increases, and I've now reached the point where I am ready to put the back panel on hold and then start picking up for the front 2 panels and working the brioche there. I'm happy with how it's, I think, going to fit so far. It looks wide enough. I wanted it to be a little bit more relaxed of a fit. So I did size up to a size medium, so it's going to, I think, have a more looser fit on me, and I'm happy with that so far. Okay, and my next whip is my Esther Jacket by Petite Knit. So during podcast episode number 9, I shared I was at the same point for my honey vest, Esther Jacket, and also my Lakes V-neck pullover. And so as the episode progresses, you're gonna see which ones I made more progress on. So my honey vest, I finished the back panel, and the Esther Jacket, I finished the back panel, but then I also worked the right front, and I'm about to pick up stitches for the left front. So the Esther Jacket is an all-over textured knit jacket that's knit from the top down. The back is shaped with increases, and then the front, you pick up stitches and then you work some increases for the collar. It's a pretty high neck collar, and the cardigan front is pretty flat, or it has a pretty straight down silhouette, I guess. What I'm trying to say, there's no increases after, so you just end up working this section flat all the way down. And the yarn that I'm using is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes in the shade Almond, which is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. And then I'm also using Drops Kid Silk in the shade Almond. So I made some progress on this jacket, but I would say it's still pretty slow progress because I'm trying to figure out a modification that I want to make to the jacket. So I'm knitting the size extra small. I'm normally an extra small in Petite Knit patterns, but I decided to size down one more size to the smallest size in the pattern because I want the jacket to be a little bit less fitted than the intended positive ease. So yes, knitting the extra small. But another modification that I wanted to make in terms of the sizing and fit is I noticed that in the, I think I mentioned this in my last podcast episode as well, but I noticed that the sleeves of the Esther jacket look quite large. The sample photos from Petite Knit, a lot of her photos that she posts, the sleeves are kind of scrunched up, so I feel like it's hard to tell. But I found that the sleeves were a little bit too wide, and I wanted them to be a little bit more fitted. And so I thought a modification that I could make is I could knit the back panel and the front panel to be a few centimeters shorter, so the armhole isn't as deep. And then when I pick up stitches for the sleeves, I don't have to pick up as many stitches. And based off of how the sleeve motif looks, I think it's pretty easy to modify that because a lot of the sleeve is seat stitch. So I thought I could try and do that, but I'm having a lot of trouble trying to figure out how deep I should make the armhole. So I ended up knitting the back panel to be 1.5 centimeters less, so it's 21.5 centimeters measured from the cast on to the bottom here. And then the front as well, I am knitting it to be about 1.5 centimeters shorter. The reason why I was having a bit of difficulty trying to calculate this is because of the slanted back shoulder. Because of that slant, the back panel is supposed to be shorter than the front panel. I don't know if you can see here, if I go like this, but usually in drop shoulders like this where you have the slanted back, the front panel is a little bit longer so it can go around your shoulders and then still meet at the bottom when you join the work under the arm. And so I knew that the front panel was going to be a little bit longer than the back panel, but I didn't really know how much. Like, I didn't really know where this seam was going to fit on my back. And so I initially knit this back panel to be shorter, but then I realized that this front panel was not as long as I thought, so I had to go back to increase more length at the back panel. And I think that this is going to be okay. I think the armhole is going to be smaller, but it's still going to be more relaxed. And in order to join the front and the back panel, the motif needs to be on the same row for the all over textured stitch pattern, like this diamond motif, to line up. So that's been pretty easy to keep track of because the stitch pattern is so visually striking that it's just really easy to check if I'm on the same row for the front and the back. And so I reached that point for this front panel, and so that's why I'm ready to start it for the left side, and we'll join it in the round. Then we'll do a bit of a try on to test it out, and then if it still doesn't work, then I'm going to have to go back and make a few more modifications to the fit of the jacket. I'm still knitting on gauge. I still have achieved the correct gauge for this pattern, but yeah, I'm doing a few modifications to the sizing, which I'm hoping is going to work out well. All right, I feel like we're flying through these updates. I guess because I haven't worked that much of each project yet, so I can share quite quickly, but I feel like normally I'm quite chatty, a bit rambly with some of these updates. So yeah, I feel like we're moving through it pretty quickly. The next whip that I have to share is the one that I made the most progress on out of the three. It's my LYS V-neck pullover by Ozetta, and this is a test knit that I'm doing, and it's due in a few weeks, so I really need to continue to get a move on this whip. So for this sweater, I'm using 3 strands of yarn held together. I'm using 2 strands of Wool Dreamers Saona in the shade Guthrie, and also Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in the shade Dusty Moose. So these 3 strands, and the finished fabric is pretty dense, I would say, on 5mm needles, but I'm really enjoying the fabric. It's pretty soft. I used Saona before for 2 previous projects, and I found for those, the Air Tee and the Lakes Tee, I still wear them. I probably wear my Lakes Tee more than my Air Tee, but I found that using Saona as a single strand in a knit tee where I wouldn't be wearing anything underneath, I found it was a little bit too rustic or woolly for me. It's not going to be like, what are some rustic yarns I've used? It's not going to be like Isager Tavini or like Briggs and Little Regal, like that woolly and rustic. But I do want to mention that I guess it's a little bit more woolly than I say another wool cotton blend is. Like Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino, which is a cotton and merino, as the name suggests, blend, is a lot more softer than Saona, which is also a wool and cotton blend, but it uses the Manchalopi's wool, so it is a little bit more of like a drier, woolier feeling. However, when you pair it with the Mohair, so holding it with they fell on the floor, sorry, I just had to grab them again. Holding it with the Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair, it really softens up the fabric, and it is now next to skin. Like if I would totally knit like a Cumulus blouse or like a cognac sweater, which I don't really wear anything underneath when I wear those blouses, with one strand of Saona and one strand of Mohair. I really like how it looks. I like the heathering. But yeah, overall, I'm just trying to say that I really enjoy the addition of Mohair to this fiber composition. So back to the pullover. The Lakes V-neck pullover is a V-neck version of the Lakes pullover, which is a already released design by Haley. So this one just has the V-neck collar, but it has the same exact construction as the Lakes pullover. So it's very familiar to me, and I really like the construction. As I mentioned in my last podcast episode, if you saw that, there's the saddle shoulder pieces that you work, the 2 saddle shoulder pieces, and then you pick up for the back panel. And I finished that. I picked up stitches for the front panel, started to work these increases, and then joined the work in the round. And then now I have my needles at the bottom, but I've actually started here. I've just worked 1 row of the sleeve so far. I'm going to continue to pick that up later this afternoon. But this is my progress so far. I've also knit the neckband, which was a very big slog to knit. I'm not gonna lie, I really didn't enjoy how it was knitting up, and I think it's a accumulation of things. So the first is knitting 3 strands of yarn. Even though they're thin, it's like 2 strands of fingering and 1 strand of lace, I was knitting it on 3.75 millimeter needles, so it was just a really tight gauge with 3 strands of yarn. So that was yeah, not that nice to work. And then also I think I just had different expectations. My last sweater, I guess, and also, oh no, not my last sweater, but my last v-neck sweater was my sweater number 14 v-neck a few podcast episodes ago, and I think I was comparing this process to that one. I was thinking it was going to be like that, but that one is knit on a larger needle size, and also the collar isn't as thick. So this one was just taking a lot longer of a time to do. I think there's probably more stitches overall on the needle, and also it was the smaller needle size. So yeah, I think I just set myself up for a bit of a disappointment because it wasn't as quick as that one and easy to work as that one. And then the third reason is the central stitch here is worked in a different way than I've done before. I thought it was a little bit more like fluid and easier to remember, I guess, when I was working it, but I haven't worked a v-neck in this way before. So maybe I can just try and clarify if that didn't, because I feel like I didn't really explain that very well. But with the v neck line like this, when you're doing it double folded, you pick up stitches and then you work decreases here till you reach a certain point, and then in order to fold it down on the inside, you have to work increases on the other side of the v neckline, so it lines up with the stitch count and the circumference of the neckline. Otherwise, I guess if you didn't do that and just folded down the decreases, it would be too tight. So yeah, you have to work increases here. But for the decreases here, in order to get this central stitch there, you are pulling over or knitting together 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So I've never worked it this way before, but you are slipping 2 stitches and then you pull those 2 slip stitches over another stitch in order to get this central line. And I think it looks really neat and tidy. But that was another reason why this v-neck was taking a little bit of time. Just that decreased portion was a little bit more tough to work. So yeah, all that being said, I didn't love working this v-neck, but I'm really happy with the fit. With the v-neck of the LYS pullover, it's a bit more of a shallower v-neck. So it sits a little bit higher up than my sweater number 14 v-neck. I think I would still wear a layer underneath, like a white tee or tank, even like this one, because I do really like the look or how to style a v-neck when you have a layer underneath, but it is pretty high, so I think I would feel pretty comfortable not wearing a layer underneath if I didn't want to, and just wearing this. But yeah, it is a bit of a shallower v-neck. And now I'm going to be working on the sleeves. So I just finished the wool of the body. I usually like to join in the round, and then whenever I finish the ball of yarn, I like to put the body of the sweater on hold and then start working the sleeves. I just find I get a bit more motivation to do that. So I picked up stitches this morning for the sleeve, and for the sleeve, sorry, some of my needle, sorry, some of my stitches keep falling off the needle. For the sleeve stitches here, you work a few short rows at the top in order for there to be a bit of a sleeve cap, or I guess a little bit more fabric at the top, so you don't get as much bunching at the underarms. So there's only a few short rows, but that does help make a difference and create a more comfortable fit along the sleeve. So you just work that at the top on either side of the saddle. And because of that saddle shoulder, it's really easy to pick up stitches here. Haley in the pattern gives the stitch counts for up until the saddle, and then you put those saddle stitches here that were on hold onto the needle, and then you pick up stitches on the other side. So picking up stitches around the arm is really easy for this sweater. And then once I finish that sleeve, I'll probably work on that second sleeve and then get back to the body. But yes, the deadline is approaching, so I have to get a move on with this pattern. And my fourth whip that I have to share is a pair of vanilla socks, and this is my first fingering weight sock project. And I'm also testing out my Addy Crazy trios, and I'm really enjoying how that's working up so far. So when I shared that I got these Crazy Trio flexible double pointed needles, I was thinking of doing the Humlebee socks by Fiber Tales, and I have it here to show you. Looks a little sad. I'm going to frog it after this, but I wanted to knit the Humlebee socks because they were a toe up and kind of like a shorty pair of socks, so I thought it would be cool to learn that construction. But with this yarn weight, I was using Lang Jowl and Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair together, because I already had them together like this from my April cardigan, so I didn't want to separate them out. But with that, I was off gauge with this pattern. Even knitting the smallest size, I felt like the sock was still a little bit too loose, so I decided I just don't have enough sock knitting experience to be able to modify this on the fly. So I thought that maybe I should just knit a more popular vanilla sock pattern as I get more experience, and maybe I can knit that off gauge with that yarn composition, or I can get a sock yarn in the future that I'd want to knit that pattern with, because so far I didn't have any other yarn in stash that I thought would fit the vibe of the Humlebee socks, because it does have a bumblebee motif, so I kind of want it to be like a honey or brown color. But yeah, I just don't have that in stash, so I thought I would do another pattern. So what I'm doing instead is the vanilla sock pattern by the Crazy Sock Lady, and this was a pattern that was highly recommended by a lot of people, so I have really high hopes for this pattern. I did purchase that pattern a few months ago when I thought I would use double pointed needles, so I did purchase the double pointed needles written pattern, and the Crazy Trios kind of perform more like magic loop on 2 needles, so the written instructions for that have been a bit challenging because they're written for 4 needles. So I am referencing the pattern for the stitch counts, but in terms of the process of the heel flap and then the gusset decreases, I was referencing the Crazy Sock Lady's YouTube tutorials for magic loop. I should probably just, I don't know, I haven't figured out, but I'm thinking maybe I should just purchase the magic loop one just for ease and not having to try and figure out if I'm doing it right. But so far I think I've managed to make it work. So for the sock, I've knit the cuff, the leg of the socks, and then the heel flap and gusset, and then I'm on the foot. So I think it's kind of working out, but it did require a little bit more thinking than what I wanted to do in the moment. So, oh, I also forgot to mention this sock pattern, or this sock project, is also going to be my entry, if I can finish on time, to the shorty sock knit along that's hosted by MSC Makes. She has a YouTube channel. I watched her sock collection, or box of socks video. I can't remember what it's called, but I learned a lot from that, and she just goes over all the socks that she's ever knit. And she also has a really lovely Instagram, and she's hosting a shorty sock knit along. So the Crazy Sock Lady vanilla sock pattern is meant to be a longer sock, like a more traditional sock that fits mid-calf, but I just cut some length off and I'm making it like a bit of a shorty sock, but not that short. It's not like an ankle sock. I still added a little bit of leg, but yeah. And the yarn that I'm using is this unknown yarn from Facebook Marketplace. So I got this yarn off of Facebook Marketplace a few years ago now. I think it was just someone that was destashing, and in the listing it didn't have a yarn label, but they did say it was a sock yarn. And so it was a pretty good price, and I liked the color, so I got it. But I just in case it's not a sock yarn and it's maybe just 100% wool yarn, I decided for the heels and the toes, I was going to use a sock yarn that I know is definitely a sock yarn. So I'm using Lang Jowl, which is the leftovers from my April cardigan in the shade Gold Fields. I'm using that for the heels and the toes. I also decided to do, I saw this one project that had a little bit of a contrast cuff, like a baby contrast cuff, and I really liked how that looked, so I did that as well. So what I did was I cast on with the Lang Jowl, and then I knit 2 rounds before I switched off to this wool for the rest of the cuff. And for the cuff as well, this is not advice because I haven't figured out if it fully fits my foot yet, but I decided for the cast on I was going to alternate between the long tail cast on and the German twisted cast on. I don't know if this is like a popular thing that other sock knitters do, and I just discovered it myself, but it's really something that everyone does, so yeah, apologies if this is very common knowledge. But I alternated for the 2x2 rib with the long tail cast on and the German twisted cast on, because I always hear people talk about the German twisted cast on because it's a very stretchy cast on for socks. But when I tried to do it for my Sunday socks on the 2x2 rib, I didn't really like how it looked because the German twisted cast on kind of looks like purl bumps at the top, and I thought it was really obvious against the 2 knit stitches in the ribbing. This is a very minor issue, and maybe it's just a me thing and I just noticed it and was bothered by it, but other people don't really care because it does have a nice stretchy finish. But I didn't like how that looked, so I just did the long tail cast on, which I think looks a little bit better next to the knit stitch. Again, this is a very minor concern, but I decided that I would cast on 2 stitches with long tail cast on for those knit stitches, and then switch to 2 cast on stitches with the German twisted cast on, and I did that all the way around for the cast on, and I think it really blends in well with the ribbing. It's definitely not as noticeable on the fingering weight. I could tell there's a difference between the German twisted cast on and the knit stitch on the Sunday socks, which is a worsted weight. So yeah, you don't really notice it that much, but I thought it was kind of nice that it all blends in together. I like how it looks, and it's still quite stretchy. So yeah, I've I did that, and then I've knit the heel flap and gusset, and now I'm onto the foot of the sock. I'm really liking how it's working up so far. I really do like the Addy Crazy Trios. It's a really great way to knit socks. I think there's not a lot of laddering. I think it was here. This is where the joint was between the two needles, and I feel like it's very nominal. I can kind of tell where it is, but I'm thinking it's gonna block out. This is nowhere near the laddering I would get with magic loops, so I am really liking the Addy Crazy Trios. I don't love Addy needles, and I kind of already knew that because I have a pair of Addy fixed needles. I don't really like the needle. I find it's a little bit too slippery, I guess. It's very smooth and not very sharp. I much prefer Chaogu, which has a little bit more texture to the needle and it's sharper, but they don't have flexible double pointed needles, unfortunately. So these ones are still work great because I really enjoy the innovation or technology of the flexible double pointed needles, but the needles themselves are not my favorite. So I have the foot of the sock to go on this one. I'm probably going to cast on the second sock soon just so I don't get second sock syndrome, and also all the things that I did for the heel flap and gusset I can remember, because like I said, I did have to figure out a way to do the heel flap and gusset not on DPN instructions. So while that's still fresh in my mind, I'm going to do that. But I'm really enjoying how they're working up. So that was everything for my whips, and let's get into some acquisitions. So I have acquisitions that are related to my interest in sock knitting. So the first one is I met up with my friend Maggie of Mag Knits, and we went to the park to meet up and work on our Lakes V-neck pullovers together because we're both part of the test group. So we met up and just spent a nice evening knitting together. And where we met up, it was close to Eds Mercantile, which is a vintage I actually don't really know what it is exactly. I want to call it a vintage store. It's a really unique collection of many different types of independent vendors. There's different types of things in there. There's clothing, there's little trinkets, home decor, just a lot of different things. It's a really magical shop. I love going in to check it out. And one of the owners, there's 3 different, I guess, owners. There's the parents, the mom and the dad, and also the daughter that run the shop. And I believe it's the mom. She is also either a knitter or crocheter, but she also carries vintage yarn and also like single one-off skeins like this at a discounted price, I want to say, throughout the shop. So if you go to Eds Mercantile, there's going to be little baskets of vintage yarn and just single skeins. So I picked up Drops Fable in the shade 100. This was $5 for this skein. I was originally thinking similar to my sock project now where I have the contrast heel and toe. I was thinking of doing that for another unknown wool that I have in my stash, where I don't know exactly if it has nylon in it because I got it from a yarn swap. So I was thinking of using this for the heels and toes, but I'm thinking now that this could be nice for some color work in the Charming Colorwork Socks book that I got for Christmas. So I think an off-white sock yarn is always nice to have, and I got that from the shop. I'd really recommend you check out the store if you're ever in Koreatown area in Toronto. It's really cute. So I got this yarn a few weeks ago now, but today is local yarn store day. That's why I'm wearing this yarn themed or knitting themed shirt, because it was a little bit too warm and muggy to wear knitwear. So I decided I'd wear this shirt to local yarn store day, and I went to check out 2 different stores. So I thought I'd give a little bit of a overview of the 2 stores that I went to. I was thinking that maybe I could film some videos, but because it's local yarn store day, I think that they were a little bit more busy than normal, and so I felt a little bit awkward filming, and I didn't want to also like film other people, so I just took some photos. So the first shop that I went to was Yarns Untangled, which is a little yarn shop in Kensington Market in Toronto, and I hadn't been to this yarn shop since they moved location. So they used to be in this tiny little house looking store across the street from their new storefront location, and I went to that a few years ago now, and I hadn't been since they moved to their new location, which is also on Nassau Street, but yeah, just across the street. So I went there to check it out, and they had some really nice yarn that was on sale, and they have Riverside Studio yarn, which I am interested in trying out, especially their sock yarn. They had lichen and lace. So yeah, it took a lot of self-control, but I didn't get any yarn from the store because I only wanted to get one skein. I'm on my low buy, so I told myself for the day, if I do get yarn, I'm just gonna get one skein. So I didn't get anything, but it was really nice to check out the store. They have, if you're ever, if you live in Toronto, if you're ever in Toronto and you are looking for Chaogu or Haya needles, they have a huge stock of those needles. I see them almost in every single size. So if you're looking for those needles, I would definitely recommend checking out that shop, and it's just a really lovely, beautiful store. So I went to that one first, and then the second yarn shop that I went to after that was Good Grief Yarn and Provisions, which is a yarn shop that I've always wanted to check out. It's a relatively new yarn store, maybe one of the newest in Toronto, and that's at Dundas and Bathurst. So not that far actually from Yarns Untangled, if you wanted to do a little yarn crawl, I guess, or yarn hop. But yeah, I wanted to go there because I know that Mariah, the shop owner, dyes some yarn. And I know Good Grief is going to be one of the vendors at Knit City, and one that I wanted to check out. But since I'm not going anymore, I thought it would be a nice opportunity to go and support the shop for local yarn store day, and to maybe pick out a skein that I might have gotten if I was going to Knit City. So I'm holding it up now. So when you first walk into the shop, she has a very cute dog, but she also has, when you turn to the right, the yarn that she dyes herself. So I got this shade, which immediately caught my eye because there was a swatch worked up with this colorway, and this is the As I Dream colorway on her fundamental sock base. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 400 meters for every 100 grams. And so because of that swatch, this one immediately caught my eye, and I was looking at the different bases that she had, and I'll insert a photo, but I really like this As I Dream colorway, so I pulled out the 100% merino. I don't know if it was superwash merino. I think it was like a merino single ply, but it was on the same colorway As I Dream, but it looked completely different on the two different bases. So I thought that was interesting how the different compositions of the fiber take yarn in a different way. But yeah, I decided to get the sock yarn because I want to continue knitting some socks, and I really liked all the fun speckles, all the multicolor speckles, but I still think it blends really well together, especially in the swatch. So I got this skein, and because it's local yarn store day, Mariah, the shop owner, also handed me this thing. You got a free gift with purchase because of local yarn store day, and I thought it smelled really good when she handed it to me. So as soon as I left the store, I opened it and I pulled it out, and I realized that it's a candle. It's a Rose Garden soy wax candle from Good Grief, and it just smelled really amazing. So I pulled it out, and then I was like, oh, that's really nice, and I'm definitely going to use it. But when I got home, I realized that there was more stuff in the bag. I didn't actually pull everything out. I was just excited by the candle. So there's a few little things in here. There's a free pattern from Northbound Knitting with a code, a business card, and there was this button, which I really like collecting buttons from different local yarn stores. I would say not all of them in Toronto have them. I know Yarns Untangled has their own button, but when I go visit yarn stores in other cities, I always like to check out if they have buttons. So yeah, this is definitely going on my bulletin board. I really like that. That's cute. And then there's a sticker that says basket case. Yeah, so these were a nice little surprise, and I'm glad that I was able to check out Good Grief on Local Yarn Store Day, but also because I was going to miss them at Knit City. So that was everything for podcast episode number 10. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much if you reached this point in the video. I am leaving for my trip in the next few weeks, so I was thinking my next video could be planning for that, what projects I want to bring on the trip, maybe a overview of my notions bag, like what are my must-have knitting tools when I'm away from home, when I'm traveling. I thought that would be a fun video to make. I am going to be dog sitting next week, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to get to that video. So if I don't publish anything like that, that's probably why. I just didn't have the right setup to film, but I am really excited to film that. If you have any suggestions to that video, I'd love to know down below. But yeah, until then, I will see you hopefully in that video, but if not, for podcast episode number 11.